Why was the jungle so silent that night? Why did the air feel heavy, as if nature itself was holding its breath? Deep in the heart of Madagascar, under a sky painted with storm clouds, a strange story was beginning to unfold, a story no one could have believed if they had not seen it with their own eyes. The river that once flowed gently through the forest had turned wild after days of rain. It swelled with fury, tearing trees from their roots and dragging away everything in its path. Among the chaos, a faint cry echoed, high-pitched, desperate, and trembling with fear. It was the cry of a baby cheetah, alone and stranded on a patch of mud that was shrinking with every rushing wave. The cub's tiny body was soaked, its fur clinging to its shivering frame. It tried to call again, its voice almost drowned by the roar of the flood. The mother cheetah was nowhere in sight. Had she been swept away? Or was she searching, panicked, unable to find her little one through the storm? No one knew. But what happened next would shock the jungle forever. From the shadows of the trees, glowing amber eyes appeared. Silent, deliberate, and sharp as the night, it was a fossa. Sleek and feared by many, fossas were known as hunters. Predators that stalked silently, never forgiving, never merciful. And yet this fossa paused, its gaze fixed on the helpless cub. The storm raged. The mud patch broke smaller with every second, and the water licked closer to the cub's trembling paws. The fossa tilted its head, listening to the cries. Was it instinct, hunger, or something else entirely? One could only wonder. The predator stepped closer, its claws pressing into the wet soil. Every move was careful, precise, as if weighing the choice between taking a life or saving one. The cub's cries grew weaker. The water rose higher. In that moment, the jungle seemed to whisper, urging the fossa to decide. The fossa leapt. A powerful jump over the swirling water brought it to the fragile mud patch. The cub froze, its small eyes wide with terror. The fossa stood above it, dripping rain from its whiskers, staring down at the helpless creature. Seconds felt like hours. Then, with a gentle motion no one expected, the fossa lowered its head, nudged the cub carefully, and gripped it softly by the scruff of its neck, the way a mother carries her young. The storm roared louder as the fossa turned back, leaping again to the safety of the trees. The cub dangled helplessly but unharmed, its cries muffled by the predator's jaws. The fossa placed it on the ground beneath a thick root, shielding it from the rain. It stepped back, watching, its amber eyes softening. But this rescue was only the beginning. Somewhere in the distance, faint but distinct, came a sound, a growl, low and sharp. The cub's family was closer than anyone had imagined. The mother cheetah had found the trail. What would she do when she saw her baby in the jaws of a predator? Would she see the rescue, or only the threat? The jungle waited silent again. The rain slowed to a drizzle, but the storm was far from over. The forest seemed to hold its breath as the rain slowed to a faint drizzle. The swollen river continued to growl, rushing through the valley with relentless force, dragging branches, leaves, and broken tree trunks in its violent stream. But under the thick roots where the cub now rested, there was a brief pocket of calm. The fossa sat near the base of the tree, its sleek body still tense, every muscle alert, as though it had stepped into dangerous territory it did not belong to. For a predator, carrying the cub had been an odd decision, unnatural, even risky. Yet the cub's eyes followed the fossa, no longer with sheer terror, but with trembling confusion. The animal was too young to understand what had happened, but some instinct made it stay quiet, almost as if it trusted this shadowy figure that had pulled it from the jaws of the river. And then came the sound again. A growl, faint but growing louder, sharper, filled with urgency. Leaves rustled in the near distance. The fossa's ears twitched, its head lifting. Its amber eyes narrowed as the noise crept closer. The mother cheetah was near. Her scent, wild and sharp, cut through the damp air. She had been tracking her cub's cries, and now her desperation was aflame, pushing her through the mud and thickets. The fossa crouched, its claws digging into the wet soil. It had no intention of harming the cub anymore, but how would the mother know that? To her, the fossa was a predator, a thief of lives, a danger. The cub whimpered softly, as if sensing what was about to unfold. And then, through the mist and dripping trees, the mother cheetah appeared. Her spotted coat was plastered against her body with rain, her ribs visible from the hunger of long days of hunting under stormy skies. Her eyes were blazing, wide with fear and anger. She spotted her cub under the tree root, and her growl broke into a sharp cry. She leapt forward, tail thrashing, her claws slicing into the ground. The cub squealed in response, its tiny voice rising above the storm's fading roar. It crawled toward her, but the fossa moved slightly, its presence like a barrier between mother and child. Not out of aggression, but instinct. It stood its ground, lowering its head, shoulders hunched, waiting for the mother's charge. For a long moment, predator and mother locked eyes. The air was heavy with tension. The mother cheetah's breathing was ragged, her sides heaving. "Give me my cub!" her body language screamed, her every muscle poised for battle. The fossa remained silent, still, calculating. Then the cub let out another cry, desperate and piercing. The fossa glanced at it, then back at the mother, as though considering what choice it should make next. The cheetah lowered herself, muscles coiling, ready to spring. The fossa knew the power of a cheetah's strike. A single blow could injure it fatally. But instead of retreating, it slowly backed away, its gaze never breaking from hers. Step by step it moved aside, its head turning toward the cub, as if to show it was not a threat anymore. The cub stumbled forward, its small legs splashing in the mud, and the mother bounded past the fossa, scooping her little one close with her muzzle. The cub buried its head against her wet fur, mewing softly, relieved. The mother purred low, her chest vibrating, her heart pounding with both fury and relief. She looked back at the fossa, her eyes still suspicious, still hard, but now layered with confusion. Why had the predator not attacked? Why had it even carried the cub to safety? Nothing in the jungle followed such logic. Yet the proof was right there. Her baby was alive because of the very creature she should have feared most. The forest was silent again, but the silence was different this time, heavier, almost sacred. The fossa did not move closer. It sat quietly, its tail curling around its paws, watching the reunion. The cheetah licked her cub, checking every inch, reassuring herself that it was truly unharmed. She let out a soft huff, one that sounded almost like a question, and then, in a strange, low growl, she vocalized toward the fossa. Not gratitude, not peace, but something between warning and acknowledgement. A sound that said, "I see you. I do not trust you, but I cannot ignore what you did." The cub squeaked again, but instead of clinging desperately, it peeked toward the fossa, its tiny eyes holding a glimmer of recognition. Perhaps it was too young to fear, or perhaps it had sensed something deeper during those few moments it dangled helplessly in the fossa's jaws. The rain began to thin further, the storm's rage fading into mist. But the river still boiled, swollen and merciless. Trees groaned as the water tugged at their roots. The cheetah mother knew they were not safe here. She needed to carry her cub to higher ground before the floods swallowed the forest floor. She nudged her cub gently, urging it forward. But the cub was weak, trembling from exhaustion. Each step seemed too much. She tried to lift it, but her energy was fading too. Days without a proper hunt had left her ribs hollow. She took a few steps, stumbled, then steadied herself. The fossa's ears twitched as it observed, silent but attentive. The cub mewed again, this time softer, weaker. The cheetah tried to lift it once more, managing only a few feet before setting it down again. She growled low, frustrated with her own failing strength. The fossa tilted its head, almost as if studying the scene, and then, to the mother's disbelief, it took a step forward. The cheetah snapped her head up, hissing, her lips curled back to reveal sharp teeth. The fossa froze, but then slowly circled wide, not approaching the cub directly, but scanning the terrain ahead, the fallen logs, the rising waters, the broken path. It wasn't moving to attack, it was moving to lead. The cheetah narrowed her eyes, confused. Her cub whimpered again, and she nudged it forward. She had little choice but to follow wherever the higher ground was, even if the strange predator was already walking in that direction. Every instinct screamed not to trust, not to allow such closeness. Yet with the forest drowning behind her and the cub stumbling at her side, she stepped cautiously into the same direction. The journey was not easy. Branches cracked under their weight, and the mud threatened to swallow their paws. The cub slipped often, and every time the cheetah gently helped it back up. But each pause gave the flood more time to creep closer. The fossa moved ahead silently, leaping across rocks, climbing fallen trees, showing the path without ever forcing them forward. It was as though it had made a choice, strange and unnatural, to guide instead of hunt. Hours passed in that way, and the storm finally broke into silence. A faint streak of sunlight pierced the clouds, glistening against the wet leaves. The forest smelled of earth and water, of destruction and rebirth. The cheetah mother stopped, panting heavily. The cub pressed against her. The fossa stopped too, looking back with those piercing amber eyes. For a heartbeat, the jungle seemed to freeze. The three creatures, predator, prey, and the young, stood together, bound not by instinct, but by something rarer, something even the forest could not name. And then, just when a fragile peace seemed to settle, the underbrush ahead exploded with movement. Shadows darted through the trees. A chorus of growls filled the air, deeper, heavier, layered with hunger. Hyenas, drawn by the scent of weakness, by the cries of the cub, and perhaps even by the strange scent of a predator working against its nature. Their eyes glowed in the dim light, their laughter sharp and cruel, echoing through the forest like a chilling warning. The cheetah mother stiffened, her fur rising, her cub pressing close against her belly. The fossa turned, lips curling, teeth bared. The air was thick with tension once again. The story that began with a storm had now turned into a battlefield, and survival would demand more than just instinct. The forest grew colder as the hyenas emerged, their laughter cutting through the damp air like blades. Their eyes glowed yellow in the dim light, each step deliberate, their paws crunching through wet leaves. The cheetah mother froze, her body arched over her cub, shielding it with every inch of her frame. Her growl was low and steady, but exhaustion trembled in her muscles. The cub whimpered, too weak to stand tall, pressing deeper into her belly for warmth and protection. The fossa, standing a few steps away, lowered its body as well. Its tail flicked side to side, ears flat against its head. Though smaller than the hyenas, its stance radiated defiance. It knew what was coming. Hyenas rarely attacked alone. They thrived on numbers, and their numbers now were growing. 1, 2, 3, and then 5 shadows melted from the undergrowth. Their forms circled in a loose half-moon, enclosing the cheetah, her cub, and the fossa. A long silence followed, broken only by the sound of the river surging behind them. The lead hyena stepped forward, its shoulders hunched, lips curling into a grin that was more terrifying than mocking. Drool hung from its mouth, dripping into the mud. It let out a deep, rumbling chuckle. The cheetah hissed, snapping her teeth in warning. The cub squeaked in response, a small sound drowned by the echoing laughter. The hyena tilted its head, as if amused by the effort, then turned its gaze toward the cub. Weak, defenseless, and small, the perfect prize. The fossa growled, sharp and sudden. Its amber eyes burned with an intensity that startled even the hyena. It stepped closer to the cheetah, closing the gap as if silently declaring alliance. The mother cheetah looked at it sideways, her breath quick and shallow. Could she truly allow a predator to stand beside her in defense? But there was no time to question. The hyenas were closing in, their circle shrinking, their confidence swelling. The first attack came fast. One hyena lunged forward, teeth snapping at the cheetah's flank. She twisted, striking with a claw, her paw slicing through the air. The hyena yelped, but did not retreat far, only circling back to wait for another chance. Another rushed in from the side, jaws aiming at the cub. The cheetah snarled, blocking it, her body slamming against the attacker. The cub squealed, rolling in the mud. In that instant, the fossa leapt. With a speed that shocked even the hyenas, it pounced onto the flank of the second attacker, teeth sinking into its shoulder. The hyena shrieked, thrashing violently, trying to throw the smaller predator off. The fossa clung on, ripping fur and skin, until the hyena rolled onto the ground, snapping back with furious jaws. The fossa released and darted aside, agile and lightning fast, narrowly avoiding a crushing bite. The other hyenas barked and laughed, but the tone was different now, less confident, more uncertain. They hadn't expected resistance from two predators working together. The cheetah's eyes flicked briefly toward the fossa, and for the first time, there was no distrust in her gaze, only urgency. She growled as if saying, "Fight with me." The battle stretched long, every moment louder than the last. The cheetah slashed at one hyena's face, drawing blood across its muzzle. Another clamped its jaws around her leg, and she let out a piercing cry, twisting and clawing desperately to free herself. The cub shrieked, helpless, pressing into the roots of a tree. The fossa darted between shadows, striking where the hyenas were weakest, biting legs, slashing bellies, harassing them with agility rather than raw strength. But numbers had their toll. For every strike landed, another came in return. The cheetah's body grew weary, her sides heaving, blood matting her fur. The fossa limped now, a gash across its shoulder bleeding steadily. The hyenas circled tighter, their laughter rising again, cruel and triumphant. They could sense the weakness growing. The cub, too small to fight, suddenly let out a desperate cry, louder than before. It wasn't just fear, it was rage, a plea for survival that echoed strangely across the trees. The sound startled the hyenas for a second, making them hesitate. The cheetah seized that moment, lunging forward, pinning one hyena to the ground with her full weight. She bit deep into its neck, shaking violently. The fossa, seeing the opening, launched itself at another, claws raking across its muzzle. The jungle erupted with snarls, yelps, and the sound of snapping jaws. The fight dragged on until the underbrush stirred again, not with more hyenas, but with something heavier. The ground trembled faintly. The hyenas froze, their ears twitching. From the mist, a massive figure emerged. A male crocodile pulled from the flooded river, its long body slithering across the muddy ground. Its eyes glinted with cold hunger. Drawn by the scent of blood and the sound of battle, it had come to claim what the flood had not taken. The hyenas immediately backed away, their confidence crumbling in the face of this new predator. The cheetah stiffened, her cub whimpering softly under her chest. The fossa turned its gaze toward the reptile, muscles tensing. The crocodile hissed, its jaws snapping shut with a thunderous crack that silenced everything for a moment. The hyenas retreated into the mist, unwilling to risk a fight with both land predators and the river's monster. Their laughter faded into the distance, leaving behind only the heavy breathing of the cheetah and the quiet growl of the fossa. But the danger was far from gone. The crocodile advanced, slow but steady, dragging its heavy body closer. Every step squelched through the mud, its belly sliding across the ground, its tail swaying like a weapon. Its eyes fixed directly on the cub. The cheetah hissed, backing up against the tree roots, her cub pressed tight against her belly. She swiped the air with her claws, her body arched, but she knew if the crocodile lunged, its power would be overwhelming. She was weak, her cub fragile, and the ground was slick with mud. The fossa moved to the side, circling, studying the crocodile's motion with sharp eyes. It let out a guttural growl, a sound filled not with fear but with challenge. For a moment, time slowed. Three predators stood against one another: the ancient crocodile, the desperate cheetah, and the defiant fossa. The cub whimpered, the smallest heartbeat among them, but perhaps the most important. The crocodile hissed again, then lunged. Its massive jaws opened, aiming to snap down on the cub. The cheetah shoved her body forward, slashing at its snout with every ounce of her strength. The fossa leapt high, landing on the crocodile's back, claws sinking deep into its thick hide. The reptile thrashed violently, swinging its head, snapping its jaws, but the fossa clung tight, ripping at its rough scales. The cheetah struck again and again, her claws slicing across its eyes, forcing it to close them. The crocodile let out a deep, guttural bellow, twisting toward the river. Its massive body slammed against the trees, nearly crushing the cheetah. The Fossa dug deeper, refusing to let go. At last, the reptile rolled toward the water, dragging itself back into the flood, seeking the river's depths. With a final violent twist, it threw the Fossa off its back, splashing into the water and vanishing beneath the surface. The forest fell silent once more. The cheetah panted, her cub still pressed against her chest. The Fossa lay in the mud, trembling, its body streaked with blood and dirt. It had survived, but only just. The cheetah looked at it for a long moment. Her breathing slowed. Her cub peeked curiously, mewing softly. For the first time, she didn't growl, didn't hiss. Instead, she dipped her head slightly, a gesture subtle but filled with meaning. Not trust, not yet, but recognition. Recognition that this predator had fought beside her, not against her. But before peace could settle, another sound came. Low, steady, distant, but unmistakable. Human voices. Faint at first, then clearer. The crunch of boots on wet soil. The metallic clink of tools. Hunters. The cheetah froze. The Fossa's ears perked up, its eyes snapping toward the sound. The cub whimpered again. The forest had offered battles enough, storms, floods, predators. But now a new threat approached, one unlike the others, one more dangerous, because humans never entered the jungle without reason. And in the heart of the forest, under the shadow of broken trees, the story of predator and prey was about to face its darkest turn yet. The voices grew louder. The cheetah mother's heart raced as she pressed her cub tighter to her chest. The Fossa limped forward, placing itself between the sound of humans and the fragile pair. The forest floor trembled with the weight of approaching men. A sharp beam of light cut through the mist. A torch. Then came the scent, smoke, oil, and iron. Hunters. They spoke in hurried tones, their words hard and greedy. Cheetah Cub. Worth something. And that one the strange cat, Fossa too. Both can fetch a price. The mother cheetah's ears flattened, her body trembling with both fear and rage. She knew these figures, these beings, unlike any other in the wild. They killed not for survival, but for possession. She nudged her cub back, her eyes darting for an escape. But the flood had destroyed many paths, and the forest seemed to close in around her. The Fossa growled low, its amber eyes flashing. Though battered, it stood tall, refusing to step aside. The hunters spotted the gleam of its eyes in the dark. One man raised his net, another readied a rope. They crept forward, but then the jungle itself answered. A loud crack thundered across the clearing as a giant tree, loosened by the flood, gave way. Its trunk split the ground with earth-shaking force, falling between the predators and the hunters. Mud splashed high, water rushed forward, and a wall of branches blocked the men's path. They cursed, shouting in anger, but the jungle swallowed their voices as quickly as it had carried them. In the sudden silence that followed, the cheetah and her cub stood frozen. The Fossa, still facing the men's direction, slowly turned its head toward the mother. The storm had spared them once. Now the forest itself had intervened. It was as if nature had decided, this family will not fall today. The cheetah lifted her cub gently in her jaws. Her eyes locked on the Fossa one last time. In that gaze, there was no hatred, no suspicion, only acknowledgement. She let out a low, rumbling sound. Not quite a growl, not quite a purr, but something in between. The cub, dangling from her mouth, squeaked softly at the Fossa, as though saying goodbye. The Fossa stood still, its body battered, blood dripping into the mud, but its eyes remained steady. It had stepped beyond its instincts, beyond the laws of predator and prey. It had chosen something different, protection over hunger, courage over fear. The mother cheetah turned and walked away, her cub safe at last. Their spotted forms melted into the jungle mist until they were gone. The Fossa remained behind, limping slowly back into the shadows of the forest, where its amber eyes vanished into the dark. The river calmed. The mist lifted. The jungle exhaled again, as though a chapter had closed, and in that silence, the lesson lingered. Even in the wild, where life and death chase each other endlessly, compassion can rise in the unlikeliest of places. Strength is not always in killing, but in saving. And sometimes, the bravest act is to stand against your own nature. Moral lesson for the audience. This story reminds us that survival isn't only about power or instinct. True strength lies in mercy, in protecting the vulnerable, and in breaking the cycle of fear and hatred. If even predator and prey can share a moment of unexpected kindness, then we as humans must ask ourselves, what excuse do we have for cruelty?